G'day gardeners, welcome along to the vlog. It's the 16th of September today, so it's the middle of September. Just finished the second week of September, and there's been some progress in the garden this week. It's been warm, but not as warm as it was last week. Last weekend we hit 30 and 31 degrees, which is quite warm, but that's early spring for us. We often get those extreme swings where we can go from 18, 19 degrees one day after having 30 degrees the day before. So that's the kind of climate we live in. So today I'm going to show you some of the stuff we've been doing in our garden and show you some of the progress, and we're just going to talk through it. So without any further ado, let's get into it. So starting today with the garlic. In last week's vlog you would have seen that the garlic was having some issues. Yeah, it's just struggling. I grew much better garlic last year than I did this year, and I'm not sure if maybe the bed itself just needs a refresh, or maybe the garlic itself, the bulbs that I planted this year weren't as good as last year's bulbs. Not 100% sure. Not 100% sure about the bed either, because next to it, as you can see, our potato onions, which we thinned out last week, are doing very well. They're growing very well. So it might actually be the bulbs that I sowed. So what I've done this week, it was actually early this morning I did this, is I've fertilized the garlic and I've mulched it using sugarcane mulch, which I believe is an inert mulch, which won't supply any major nutrients like lucerne mulch, for example. So that should, well, the idea of the fertilizing is obviously just to give some more nutrients to the garlic, and the idea of the mulch is just to help retain a little bit of that surface moisture so it doesn't dry out too much as the bulbs are developing. Okay, moving on. Potatoes in these pots, I've actually pulled them out. They were seed potatoes that I grew. They're not seed potatoes I purchased. I grew them last year, and I dug up a little bit of the soil early this week and tested it and found that they actually weren't producing chits at all. So I suspect that what was happening was that they were in a cool, dark, moist environment, which is perfect for storing potatoes but not very good for chitting them. So they weren't harvested that long ago. They're actually only harvested in late June, early July. So the bulbs themselves had a fair bit of storage life in them. So I've taken them out and I'm actually trying to chit them manually now in an egg carton. And hopefully we can get some chits on them and get them back into the soil and grow them before Christmas. All the pots are doing well. No major changes there. Our flower seedlings are coming up really nice. And you see we're growing flowers in pots this year along with the vegetables. Those ones are taking their time, unfortunately, but these ones, they're racing ahead. Now I can't actually remember what these are. If I remember to do it, I'll put it in the as like a note in the video so you can know what those flowers are. Peas in our bin, doing well. Very vigorous growth. We've got plenty of flowers coming on now. We've got little pods developing, so it's not going to be long before we'll be picking and eating peas. Our golden podded peas, excuse me, yeah, they're not doing too well. I just don't like this variety. I don't think this variety is quite fragile. The stems are much more fragile, especially when they're young, than this variety here. They seem to be a little bit more translucent and just a little bit more vulnerable to snapping. And when I've tried to tie them down, I have actually broken quite a few of them. So moving on, this potato is doing very well. That's coming up, and that's been, I'm just going to slowly fill that with compost as it grows up. Our leeks are coming on well. They were planted late, unfortunately, but they are doing well. And hopefully we'll start eating leeks in about a month. Some young ones. Over the back, our beetroots are late this year. Again, that's just as all my fault. Just planted seedlings late. Didn't grow any beetroots through the bulk of winter, and only sowed seeds towards the middle and end of winter. So I think it was around the end of July I sowed seeds, which is too late. I should have had seeds in the greenhouse earlier than that. But in saying that, we didn't actually have our mini greenhouse ready by then. So again, if you don't have things ready, there's a knock-on effect, and it affects your sowing times, it affects your planting times. You just need to get the things you need to sow plants ready beforehand. So if you need a mini greenhouse like we've got to sow your seeds through winter, then you really need to get that going before you need to sow your seeds. So lesson learned. But we've had that issue in the past couple of years, especially as we've extended. Last year we didn't get those beds ready in time, so our corn and potato plantings last year were quite late. But this year they're on time, so we're just working through those, and it's just a growing thing as the garden grows. We don't always have things ready on time. Okay, our Australian brown onions are doing very well. They look very healthy, those clusters. And hopefully this experiment works out. As I mentioned last week, we're trying to make sure we get bulbs which aren't too big, or onions which aren't too big. We don't want the real big ones. We want, kind of golf ball to a bit bigger than golf ball, probably about 5 or 6 centimetre bulbs would be perfect. Big 8 or 9 centimetre bulbs is just too much for us. My cabbages, well, we'll wait and see how they go. We've already got pest pressure from cabbage moth, so I suspect I'm going to have to cover those very soon. I've already seen cabbage moths in the garden, probably one every couple of days. Our peas are doing well over there, lettuce is doing well. These peas are also, you can see the pods on these, they're podding quite nicely and they're flowering very well. It's a good variety of peas, and these peas we actually grow from the seeds, so I'll save a few of those pods at the end and just let them dry right out, grab the seeds and sow them again next year. And I haven't actually bought this variety. I bought this variety 4 years ago, and I've been growing them every year from the dried out peas from the end of harvest. Okay, so this is another problematic bed, unfortunately for us. This is our potato bed. We've grown potatoes in here a few times, and the reason why we grow potatoes in this particular bed, and I know they say you shouldn't because of potential for disease, for blight, but we do grow potatoes over and over in this bed. We haven't had blight issues, and the reason why we use this bed is this used to be a sand pit for our kids years ago, and there was a lot of sand in this soil at this particular end, just kind of this end here of this bed area. There was a lot of sand. So I've mixed in a lot of organic matter, a lot of cow manure and compost and organic matter into it, and it's it is kind of a very loose soil, and I'll show you what I mean. It actually comes up right really easily, like that. And you can see the sand in it. It's very sandy. It's a very light soil. So yeah, the potatoes have no issue growing really big. Last harvest, we grew in spring last year, we grew, how many kilos was it? It was a lot. It was about 13 kilos of potatoes just in this bed. And we had some absolutely huge potatoes, which was really, really good. It was the first big potato crop we've ever had. And I'll put that, probably a lot of it down to the nutrients that we've added to this soil, but also the fact that it's quite loose soil, it's quite sandy, which is perfect for if you want to grow big potatoes. But in saying that, we don't chit them, or we haven't been chitting them, so we will get multiple growths, so that will limit potato size, so I've heard. Okay, moving on. Our lettuce and carrots, these are also doing really well. Our carrots are doing really well this spring. Just beautiful growth. They've been thinned to the point where I'm happy with them. And hopefully we get some really nice carrots from those through to Christmas. We should probably be starting to harvest those in October, November, and then through to Christmas. That'd be great. The lettuces here, I keep forgetting to look up what these were. They're a semi-cos lettuce, and I've planted those this year because we planted loose leaf lettuces a lot, specifically this one, which keeps coming up. This one here, I can't remember what that's called. Not a huge fan of these loose leaf ones, to be honest. They're good in salads, but when you want to do like a Caesar salad, you really want something a bit more cos-like. I've tried growing cos lettuces with very little success. So this is the first year I'm growing a semi-cos, and so far these are doing really well, really well. We're going to have a lot of really nice lettuce heads soon. Although we are getting pest pressure, and I'm not sure what has been chewing that. I can't find any caterpillars as of yet, so I'm not sure what's been doing that, whether it's a slug that's around here somewhere or what, but I haven't seen any slug trails, and there's no slug trails on the lettuce itself, so I'm not 100% sure what's doing that, but we've got plenty of them, so if we lose a couple, that is okay. Now this, I just want to mention this is actually a volunteer potato, And this is one of our royal blues. I can tell that by the colour of the stem. And that's just volunteered itself out of this. There's obviously a small potato in there somewhere. Now, it's probably a really small one. It's probably only a couple of centimetres at the most, which is not really big enough to grow a big vigorous plant, so they say. But I have left it there. We'll see how it goes. Those lettuces will be gone by the time that potato is maturing, so it'll then have a bit of space, and I might just leave it there and see how it goes. I often leave volunteer plants in the garden just to see what happens. Okay, over here we got another row of lettuces, which I talked about last week. They're just ones that I sowed, when I thinned these out. And also, which you can't see at the moment because they haven't sprung yet, we've planted corn already. So our corn seeds are already planted in this bed. And the variety I'm growing this time, or this spring, is an heirloom variety, but it's not a super sweet. It's a standard heirloom variety, like an old-fashioned one. Just to see what it tastes like. I've never tried old-fashioned corn, so I'm interested to see what it tastes like compared to the super sweet modern hybrids. Now, I don't have anything against the modern corn hybrids. I think corn is a great example of a hybridized plant, which is really great for gardeners to grow. So typically I would grow an F1 hybrid, super sweet, and no issues there. But I'm curious to see what they're like. So next to those we've got our sunflowers. Our sunflowers are doing well. I've got a nice little field of sunflowers growing here. I've grown them like that specifically so it would look like a field of sunflowers, and they're doing very well. Our fig trees are doing really well now. Really nice shoots coming up on them. I'm going to have to chop that top off because it's getting close to the top of the fence, and I've already got the materials now so I can espalier along the fence here. I've got the steel posts and the wires, which I'm going to do in the next week or so. Okay, moving on, I'm just going to show you our olive tree in this pot. I can't remember the variety. I'm going to have to find the tag and write it down because I know I'm going to forget eventually. It is a black olive, and last year it didn't grow any usable fruit, but it was only a new plant. It has been trimmed quite heavily to try and keep it in a ball shape to keep it manageable, but plenty of flowers and coming up on it at the moment, which is good. Over here we've got, these are the pots with my hot plants in it. Now, they're actually in the wrong spot at the moment. I need to move these to the sun because they're staying damp and in shadow every morning. And they're not getting sun until midday onwards. So on these cooler days, I actually need to move these pots to the sun, or I risk rotting the rhizome that's in the ground. I'll show you our apple tree. We're growing an apple in our backyard. This is a Granny Smith. The Granny Smith variety was actually cultivated originally in Sydney. I think it was Ryde, the suburb of Ryde, from memory. So it's a Sydney cultivar, and I do believe we're going to have some buds coming up on it soon. We planted it here because typically we're not an apple growing climate. We get mid to high 30s in summer, and we've already had 30-degree days in the first 2 weeks of spring. But where I'm growing it, it's under the shade of this golden ash, and on the other side we've got this big jacaranda. So what effectively happens here is we've got a little microclimate going. The sun is, this is looking north, the sun is directly up that way, so that's north. So this tree is actually in shade a lot of the time, and that keeps it cool and moist, and hopefully that provides a nice little microclimate for it to grow. It actually flowers and produces buds later than trees in Tasmania that are exposed to sunlight. So that kind of shows you how how a microclimate can really make a difference to your plants. Then my wife's azaleas growing well. Last thing I'm going to show you is the feral cat. And last but not least, these are our more mature sunflowers. These are all volunteers. They grow up from seed that was in the ground over winter, and they've just come up randomly in the garden. Our flowers are doing well. This comfrey, I need to get rid of this comfrey. I don't want it in this garden. It takes over. Marjoram. Lettuce, we had a huge Caesar salad with that yesterday. It was delicious. Rosemary. And the other one that's not marjoram, which I can't remember at this very moment in time. So that's it. that's where we're up to this week. This is the second, or the end of the second week of September. That's how our garden's growing. It's going really well at the moment. So a few things happening at the moment, and things are happening much quicker. You've got to stay on top of things and make sure that you don't let issues get out of control, pest issues especially. We've got to watch those cabbage moths. Plus we've got to watch the temperatures and make sure we get our sowings in the ground when we should, because it's critical for us this time of year. Heat comes on pretty quick, and by October we've already got mid to high 20s pretty much every day, so we've got to get onto it right now. So yeah, thanks for joining me today in our garden for this vlog. I hope you got something out of it, and I hope you can join us again next week, and I'll show you how our progress is going towards the end of the first month of spring. See you later, gardeners.